Right, Rob. So, we are going to talk about Bahubali now. Now, we came into this, didn't we? We watched RRR, and then some kindly YouTube watchers said we need to watch this. And of course, this is an SS Rajamouli. I'm sorry for pronouncing that wrong. This is one of his earlier films, isn't it? Because he did RRR. So, Netflix, we chose the correct language. Is it Kannada language, or is it Tamil language? I can't remember which one it was now. But stuck it on. I've got to say, Rob, literally within the first 5 minutes of this, I was like, oh, this is way tonally different from KGF. Because KGF was the last film, which was quite dark and gritty and it's
a bit different. It's a bit different to RRR, I think, as well.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
So,
it's...
Come on, Rob, give us the very brief storyline of what this is about.
It's
massive, isn't it, as well? It's a massive epic.
Well, the premise is, to set the scene, is, I suppose, there's a woman's being chased with a baby that must be of some importance, we don't know what, and gets rescued by a tribe, and as he grows up, he feels this yearning to climb up the waterfall and see what's up there. And
it's massive, isn't it? It's massive.
And he ends up getting embroiled in these kind of local wars with these sort of rebels against this baddie king in this massive city, and it gets embroiled with what's going on there. It's got a lot. That's kind of the gist of it. Really, just gets embroiled in it. There's stuff there which it reminds you of. Again, it's like these kind of sort of myths and legends, isn't it? Where so and so goes off on an adventure, like Jason the Argonautsy type things.
Yes,
and then
that's a good call, yeah.
Someone finds out that someone actually was their mother that accidentally killed their brother, or their brother betrayed them, and all those kind of myth and legends. Because I looked up to see if this was actually based on a real, loosely based on fact of an actual character, and they've just built a myth around it. But I don't think it is, from what I had a quick glance on Wikipedia, to be honest.
So again, we've got these larger than life characters. Now, the first thing I thought was, in KGF, the actor Yash, he was absolutely ripped, wasn't he? Whereas this actor, I'm afraid I didn't write his name down, who plays Sivu, isn't it? Is his name? He actually isn't as ripped, but I'd say he's well toned. So he's like an athlete rather than a bodybuilder, isn't he?
They're still ridiculously
ripped, isn't they?
Yeah, good looking and tough, but he's not quite as unstoppable as the last two characters we've seen in RRR and in KGF, particularly KGF. So in here, you do feel there's a little bit of a sense that he isn't going to succeed in every single fight, and he isn't going to be able to pick up a tank and throw it over his head. Yeah. He does make mistakes, he does fall, he does bleed. So he's still a tough guy, but he's got a little bit more vulnerability than I think we've seen in the last couple of films.
He's absolutely... I thought he was likeable instantly out the gate. Like the first couple of times you see him, you think, what a nice guy. Because he's trying to help his mum, isn't he? Fill up a shrine,
he moves the shrine.
And he's trying to go up. He's trying to get up this waterfall. And again, this must be a thing of Indian cinema. And listeners, if it is, I love it. And I'm looking for it. It's that kind of. There's a song, isn't there, about the character. So it's like, this guy, he's doing this, he's as strong as a lion, he can climb the Great Wall, and he can do all that.
There's a few times it does it in this, isn't it, where it's... I
really like it as exposition as well. It's really clever and good.
Yeah, this is one of the things, we've seen two films by the same director, but we're seeing something similar here, where there's this trend of storytelling through music and having these little musical intervals, because this has like a little music scene in the middle, which I kind of thought was a bit jarring out of place. I thought, hang on, how are they going to explain this now? They've all got different costumes, but I think it was meant to be more of a dream sequence.
Yes.
So I ended up thinking, I'll forgive it now, because at first I thought, this doesn't fit. This is a bit bonkers.
Rob, if I can monologue just for a minute here out of my notes, there was quite a lot of comedy in there, which I really liked. It's quite
I didn't think so. Really?
There's quite a lot. So, for example, there's a bit where he instantly falls in love with this freedom fighter. What's her name now? Avantika, right?
Yeah.
And he falls in love with her, and she's out on these missions, and he's in a tree, isn't he, above her, or he's hiding in some water, and he keeps painting her hand, and I'm like, what is this guy doing? It's really weird. And then a bit later,
unwanted attention. I was disgusted by it.
Yeah, right. Fair enough. Right. But this is something you mentioned before. She's an absolute badass, because you mentioned before, are we going to see any badass females?
Yes.
Well, she kicks ass like no one's business. She's super good.
I watched some of this with my daughter, actually, funnily enough. I put it on, and she was sort of knocking around in the room, and a new way of telling if a film's good now, the daughter test.
Oh, yeah.
And she was quite enjoying it, and she was having a bit of a laugh at some of the bits which seemed a bit silly, and you think, is that meant to be intentionally funny, like he's doing the tattoo and stuff like that? And
so
I was saying to her that actually this is good, actually, because she feels kind of,
she holds her own,
tough and holds her own, but
wait a minute. Only
to a certain degree, and then he turns up.
Yes.
And this is what my daughter's observation, actually, where she's saying it's this kind of, you think of old Disney films where
very much, I know where you're going with
Disney
this,
films, the Disney press, all they need is a handsome prince to come and save them.
Yeah, it is, I'm afraid, isn't it? So she's a complete badass.
And what my daughter said, this reminded, she said it looked like it was going to be a bit more sort of Mulan-y, where it's like she's got like a Mulan type character, especially with a bit with the avalanche in it. It's very Mulan, that is.
Yes.
But then it feels like, a bit like Mulan and Brave, you've actually got a strong female character here, but then still needs the prince to come along and say, what, you're on a mission? I'll do your mission for you. And it's just like, she's pushed to the side for the second half of the film. And I hope I really hope she's in the second one a lot more, because second half of the first film is big flashback, and you end up kind of missing her.
Well, the entirety of the second one is mostly flashback as well. So, but then I've got on my notes here. He does this thing, doesn't he? And now again, look, it's possibly, well, it's not possibly, he's completely misogynistic, and they're having a fight, aren't they? And he does this thing where he snips her top off, and she's just like a sports bikini top. Then he does something, and he unwraps her skirt, and then she spins back into it.
It's like a flirty dance thing, which I think, and I don't know. That isn't there something similar to that, or almost like that at the start of Shang-Chi, when it's like the romance is built through like a sort of a dancing, flirting
fight, and then he gets some like berries, doesn't he? And he sort of touches her face and puts some makeup on her. Now, look, as I'm describing it, it does sound really pervy, and it sounds really.
My daughter's comment was, "Is this a makeover show?" Yeah,
right. But actually, I've got to be honest, I was like,
well, actually, we've not said to people anyone who has no idea what this film is.
Yeah.
That in terms of like the setting, it's kind of like it's
dreamy.
It's set in the past, so it's more. It's swords and catapults and all that kind of bows and arrows and that sort of thing, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's more you sort of like.
But you're right.
I know it's not fantasy in terms of there's no elves and trolls in it. But
it is fantasy, isn't it?
There's moments it reminded me of, and not Lord of the Rings so much, but some bits which I thought were a bit silly. It actually reminded me of some of the silliness in maybe a little bit of Lord of the Rings, but in The Hobbit, when like Legolas is doing those silly things, like he's running up bricks as they're falling. Or even when like Gimli just runs down at the Helm's Deep and knocks everybody out of the way. There's moments like that in this, isn't there? Because there's like big battles of people with swords and spears on horseback, and it's just
spinning.
If you imagine those slightly more the more over the top, borderline out of place moments in Lord of the Rings, and ramp those up to 10, that's what this does.
It's like Aladdin, isn't it? As well, it's got that kind of feel. But I put on here that what I thought was good was that they're having this romantic fight stroke falling in love scene with a song that was really nice, and then they sort of go into like a frozen forest, don't they? And the sound detail on this, because they're hitting these icicles and they're falling off, it's really good, really good sound quality.
You know what? At this point, this film reminded me of. This is going to seem like a really strange thing to point out. In like Roger Moore James Bond films.
Yes.
I always noticed when I watched, and I noticed this when I was young actually, that when they obviously overdub, they do additional dialogue, don't they? A lot of the time the actors film the
yes,
bits on afterwards. Yeah. And I always felt like, if you ever watch Roger, now pointed it out, this is like Tamara Morrison's teeth for you now.
Extra
pointed out,
loud.
Yeah. and these are doing it like, so he throws someone on the grass and the grass cracks like it's glass. Yeah. And then the guy's going, ugh, all the time. And they're just being thrown around all the time. So, and is it just trying to show that they're not all dead?
I think so.
So they're just going, oof.
So, up until this point, it is all sort of fantasy, dream-like stuff. Yeah, there's a bit, isn't there, where they're fighting some soldiers on a mountain and they sledge your toboggan down on a half.
The budget let it down there.
It did.
Quite badly.
That wasn't great.
With this... The budget, though, I looked at, because I was curious how expensive this was compared to American films. Like American films now, like $200 million easy all the time. In dollars term, this cost $28 million.
Really?
And it was the most expensive Indian film at the time. Now, for $28 million, they're getting
amazing.
A lot of... Cause there are bits like that, some of that CGI stuff, especially with some of the swarming armies at the end, that look really bit dodgy, to be honest. Yeah. They look worse than the Lord of the Rings orcs, and that's an older film. But...
for that money,
but some of the city stuff and some of the backgrounds and the costumes and the extras and everything. $28 million.
Rob, forget the fact that it's a foreign film for us. I honestly was sitting there, mouth agape at times, at these pure... Now, again, it's half extras, half CGI, massive cities, giant gold statues. And
but the mid shots, though, you can see them. You can really spot the difference between the CGI crowds and... There's a bit like when he's running towards the camera on a horse, and there's characters have been knocked out of the way, and they're clearly CGI because you think, well, an actor wouldn't do that. But there's other bits when he's running along, hitting people with a sword, and the stuntmen are falling on the floor, and the screen is full of extras. You can see that they're all people in costume, all battling away and stuff. So big on extras, aren't they? These Indian films.
I don't know how they choreograph it. It's so well done, so well done.
I know the city, obviously, when they're showing a swooping shot and stuff like that, obviously the CGI is a construct there. But when things like when the lady there's a bit where he has to go and rescue this lady. Yes. Won't go into the reason why he has to or who she is. But
her name is Devasena. I've written that down.
And she's chained up. But the bits with her, it's like, well, that all around them is a big set, isn't it?
Yeah.
They have built some big sets for this.
And again, I don't know if this is going to be true of all women in Indian films, but she's taking no shit off anyone, isn't she? So the king's like, yeah, I've got you locked up, and she's like, whatever, you're not going to break me. And she's not. She's iron-willed, isn't she?
Collecting one stick at a time. I'm going to burn him on this.
Yeah, I'm going to burn him on this. He's dead. He's dead.
Yeah, it's strong female again. I'm loving it now, seeing these stronger females.
Very much so. I've written in my notes, fight against the king's son in the rain. There's lots and lots of slow motion fight scenes. I love all this stuff. I absolutely love it. Do you know what I do love? And I didn't write his name. Is it Katapa? He's like the older...
Kapata. Is it Kapata or Katapa? It's Kapata, isn't it? Yeah.
He's like the older sort of man-at-arms, isn't he? He's like the...
man-at-arms, is that you?
Like He-Man.
The He-Man reference.
He's like the general, isn't he? Or like the... Well, he's actually a slave, isn't he? But he's like an uncle.
He's really interested because he's working on behalf of the baddie king because he kind of has to because he's made a promise. So he's so loyal to keeping his promises. That was interesting. It is Katapa. It's T then the P, so it's Katapa.
I've put on here and always a massive favourite of mine. So the sort of later part of this film, he's there. He's in the sort of giant city, isn't he? And they're talking about this invasion, aren't they? That happens. So you hear about this massive invasion by these. I don't know what they are, like Mongol warriors.
Just over halfway through, it suddenly turns into it's about a 2.5 hour film.
Yeah.
And then the last hour of it really is like a big flashback of the main character's sort of dad and granddad, mainly his dad.
Yeah.
Played by the same actor, and it's just a massive. It's like Return of the King, isn't it? That's the only point.
It really is.
A battle on that sort of scale of tons of like barbarian bad guys, tons of people on horseback, and massive fight.
Another another trope that I'm finding so far, which I absolutely love, and it is like our main hero covered under 10 guys, then he sort of stands up and he throws them all off, and they're obviously all on wires, but it looks great. I've put on here motivational war speech. I love a good motivational speech. It's absolutely good. And I've also got the Queen Mother. So this is again, and it's in the flashback. So this. Excuse me. Someone's
your dog's giving a review of the film.
All the extras, the actors, they're all in bright colours. Really, even though it's a horrible city and it's ruled by an evil king, even the king is wearing like gold armour, and he's got the king's dad. He's got that guy he's got a disabled arm, hasn't he? I quite liked him actually. He was a real bad guy, wasn't he? He's got a really big moustache and a proper moustache twirler. But all in all, it was a really nice film for me. I've got to be honest, as soon as I watched it, I'm like, right, I'm watching number 2 tomorrow. So I've watched number 2 already, because
I felt like, when with KGF, where I just said, well, I feel like I want to break from that and watch a couple of other things.
Yeah.
But with this, I do feel like I want to get started on the second one fairly soon, actually.
Yeah. Spoilers, it's more of the same. If you like the first one. Would it be fair to say, Rob, this is the Indian Lord of the Rings? If that's a fair comment to say.
It's a funny comparison, because in the sense it's not fantasy in that sense, is it? It's not, because it's not trolls and all that kind of jazz or magic.
What's that film? Is it not Troy or something like that? Isn't it?
Yeah, that's not that. Yeah, that's a good comparison, because it's not gritty like Gladiator, and it's not quite as fanciful as Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, or any. Like we said, we're comparing this to Kung Fu. You say, oh, it's ridiculous that he can do this, but then look, you've accepted that in Kung Fu films for years, so it's not that ridiculous.
Absolutely.
I think the second half, well, the big battle, that was like that half an hour battle in Return of the King, Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. It felt very much like that. The stuff before that feels like you say, it's a bit more sort of like that kind of simple, like an Aladdin sort of thing, really, with bits of backstories and people double crossing each other. This feels like a myth and legend sort of classic story. Really, it made me feel like it was based on a real legend, possibly.
Do you think, and this is probably a bit unfair to say this, but do you think there's a little homage to 300 in this? There's definitely some instances of our main character wading his way in slow motion and sped up again in slow motion. Some Zack Snyder-ish, but has this been going on for years before Zack Snyder was doing it?
I mean, this is 2015, so it would have been after 300. And certainly after Lord of the Rings, so maybe it's Indian cinema trying to do something on that sort of scale, maybe. Even some of this little slow-mo shots where the characters are almost silhouetted, and with the sandy background and that kind of, everything's got like an orangey red filter to it, that does make it look very much like 300.
You mentioned earlier about some of the special effects, and did you notice at the start there was a quite big disclaimer saying no animal at all was harmed, they're all CGI,
and the word CGI appear in the bottom left hand corner of the screen?
No, I didn't notice that.
What? You watched that 2.5 hour film and you've not noticed it?
Rob, I did not know that at all. I was so into it.
Well,
I'm going to watch it again.
Not when he's riding on a horse.
Yeah.
But when he's like, someone's punching an elephant. Yeah, someone punches an elephant in this film.
Yeah.
Those sorts of things. Or a bison was being killed, and bottom left-hand corner, the letter CGI appear, and I googled that because I was curious about that, and apparently it's one of these rules from the for Indian cinema that to show that animals aren't hurt, it does have to have CGI in the bottom left-hand corner to say that this is a real animal, and the anti-smoking adverts at the start. That's the things they have to do. Well,
I never. I was that into this film, I didn't even spot that. But going back to the CGI, yes, in some places you can tell the budget isn't there, but it didn't actually ruin it for me. I was into it. Like, for example, in Lord of the Rings, the amount of money that cost, I hate Legolas surfing on his shield, that kind of thing, right? Whereas in this, I'm like, I know. Well, I wasn't actively thinking that I know there's not as much budget, but there's not as much budget.
Yeah. I suppose when you watch, if you watch like a big Disney production like a Star Wars, and there's a bad special effect in it, you think, how has that got through when this film costs a fortune? Or like the dodgy CGI on Justice League on Superman's mouth and all that kind of
Yeah.
thing, where you just
Or
think,
what about-
how is this?
What about Mandalorian? What about Boba Fett bikers?
Yeah, there's things where you just think, how has this got past someone? With this, it's more like if I watched, well, I already mentioned Jason the Argonaut. If I watch Jason the Argonauts now, I'm not going to be watching it going, those skeletons look rubbish, because you just accept, okay, this is the budget, and you just accept that it's doing what it can with the budget and the special effects it's got. Really, the fact that I still can't get over this is 28 million. I just
Unreal.
think what the director has given you for 28 million there, this massive epic, it's like,
now I'll be
well
interested
done,
to see
sir.
what the second one's budget was. I'll be interested to look at. Go on then, Rob. So how many charming smiles? Because the main actor, he's got a smile that can light up a room, hasn't he?
How many beautiful girls standing in the middle of a waterfall?
Oh, I fell in love with every girl in this as well. Do you know what? I absolutely loved it. For me, I'm going to say 8, bordering on 9 at the minute, because I think
I'm a little bit low. I'm saying a 7 maybe.
It's nice actually, because when you watch these films that are not our natural, they're not in our natural sort of language, are they? They're dubbed films. You watch it, 2.5-hour film, excuse me, and you think, right, there's a second film, and you're either going to think, oh, okay, I need to put 2.5 hours to watch another. I really wanted to watch the next one. I was gagging to watch the next one, and that was a good feeling that it did that.
What I like, I've always felt like this is going to seem like a bit of a reaching comparison here, but I've always quite liked films and stories when they're set in a world that isn't my own.
Yes.
So, with like Star Wars is a fully realised world, or Lord of the Rings is a fully realised world, or Blade Runner is a fully realised future world, and it feels solid, and you feel like they've put their homework in and making sure everything all makes sense. Even Harry Potter, even though the main bit's in our world, but the magic world side of it, I think it's full. And this appeals to me in that way, because it's set in the past, but it's in a country, culture, I've got no connection with. So it's as much as an alien world to me, really, rather more so than a story just set in the past, because the language is different, the styling of the buildings is different, the weaponry is different to what I'm used to watching in Western English or American similar films, like you say, like comparing it to Troy or any of those sort of films. Or I'm thinking
I would say, you and me, Rob, we watch all sorts of stuff. Like The Green Knight was divisive amongst a lot of people. I would say this is a good film for anybody to watch if you can watch subtitles. I know some people don't like subtitles.
Yeah, I would say if I wanted out the 3 we've watched, if I wanted someone who's never watched, if I wanted to try and get someone on a similar journey that we're on at the minute, I would say R&R is the one that's going to grab your attention in terms of full-on crazy entertainment, and this one probably second. But I think if you do like this kind of gladiator Lord of the Rings, if that's your bag and you like those kind of swords and sandals, they used to call them, didn't they? Sword and sandal epics. Then I think you'd like it. Yeah,
Definitely so.
Very good.
Definitely so. Very good. Cool.